Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am so honored to be joined by Gina Economopoulos. Gina, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, Xander, and to all the listeners. It is such a joy and an honor to be here. Yes, and you said it correctly. My name is Gina. Easy, Gina. And my last name is Economopoulos. I was raised on Long Island, a New York girl. And today I live on the New Jersey shore. I'm an End-of-Life Doula, as well as a first-time author, as well as an inspirational speaker. 3 in 1. So that's
wow. Well, Gina, I know you and I have a lot to talk about. Part of what I cover, one of the subjects I cover is loss of a sibling. So we're going to talk a little about that. But I have to say that when I was doing research and you contacted me about being a guest, and I was looking you up, you have been on an epic journey.
Yes. Yeah.
So I really want to get into some of this because it is, you are amazing. So
thank you.
Let's go back a little and just talk about some of the epic things that you've encountered and that you've done. Now, one of them was that you were a nun.
That's correct.
And tell me about being a nun.
Okay. I was a Franciscan sister, and our community was in the South Bronx of New York. So I had lived there. I was a nun for 12 years, and I ministered to all the people in the South Bronx, New York City area, as well as out of state. And we had done I've done mission trips with my community to Haiti and different places, and I've gone throughout the world to share my story back then. Because back then I had a story, but I never knew that story was going to continue after I left the nunnery. So,
absolutely. And I guess what led you to joining a convent, and then how did you come to the decision that you wanted to leave, that perhaps it wasn't working for you?
Well, yes, I was raised Catholic. Parents devout, parents loving, went to church. But as a child, who needs God? So I kind of strayed, went to college, lived the real college life with the alcohol. I was searching for love, finding it in all the wrong places. It's a song that I could have wrote, but yet I did not. But that was just my song. And so after I graduated from college, my parents moved out to Pennsylvania. So I decided to go live with them. It was the best option. And then I needed a job. And what was my job? I bartended. So because I was so familiar with that environment, that bar environment, the college scene. Mm-hmm. I thought that was going to be my life. But during that time, in my third year of bartending, thinking, yep, I'm going to be a professional bartender, go around, make money, travel, listen, etc. But my mom was diagnosed with cancer, given 4 to 6 months to live, and she died 5 months.
Oh, so I'm sorry.
I would say, and this is like 33 years ago. So I would say, Xander, that was my first dark time. I was 23 years old. Mom dies. What is the meaning of life? Like I said, I really didn't have a relationship with God. Not that I didn't believe, but I didn't know anything. I was in this state of mind with no faith, no hope. I was crying all the time. I didn't want to, live. But yet I was searching. Once again, searching. Early I was searching for love. Now I'm searching for the meaning of life. What's the purpose? What's heaven? Where's mom? Da, da, da. And that's where I did my searching, and that's where I came back to the Catholic Church. I was like, aha, the resurrection. Like I got hit off the bar stool, like St. Paul got hit off the horse. And like a conversion experience. It's like, yes, I love God. I know God. And in that, I was 29 years old. And I said, yeah, I'm going to join the nuns. I'm going to join the sisters, give my life to God, be a crusade, be a disciple, be a follower. Uh, and I did. And I did. I encountered this community. They were young men and women, because there's a friars to the community,
Right.
that love God and giving their life to God and working for the poor. And that's what St. Francis, we were followers of St. Francis. I loved it. I have a heart of service. I love, love, love. This is it. This is my goal. And I was there, like I shared, 12 years. So in those 12 years, I married God. So I made final vows to God, to the church, and to the community. Like I'm going to live the life of poverty, chastity, obedience for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But yet, God had other plans. During the good times of my serving the poor and being hands-on with helping people, I was having a quite difficult time with the community itself. It's like I shared this in my journey, so it's nothing like in my book, I should say. I shared this in my memoir that I wrote, and I experienced a lot of like rejection, a lot of pain, hurt, betrayal, isolation. And by the time I left the community, I guess it was the best option. But by that time, I tried to do everything to stay in the community because I made final vows, and like God called me. Why would he not? And I
Right.
had to go through all these thought patterns, but ultimately the community kicked me out. Polite way. I'll
Okay.
say, yeah. Yeah. They just said that I didn't belong there anymore.
Okay.
After 12 years of putting blood, sweat, and tears to them, for them, and for
Yeah.
everything I did, because I gave up everything. I didn't have nothing when I left that community. And so, of course, when I left, it was another time of my life that I was in another dark place. But granted, this time I had God. Before when my mom died, I didn't have God. Now I'm having God, but I'm angry with him or confused. Like,
Right.
why can't religious people, how can religious people hurt someone? And I was hurt. I
Right.
was extremely hurt.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. And I can say, 28 years ago, my older sister was murdered. And there were many things I thought I might encounter in my life. And certainly we all accept that death is part of, we will all experience it in our life in multiple ways and stuff. But it was one, and I'm not, I don't go to church a lot. I do think there is some sort of a being. I don't know what that is. But it was really kind of like with your mom. It is that question of how can this happen? Why has this happened? And for me, I actually remember exactly where I was on the Massachusetts Turnpike when I was wrestling with why did this happen, right?
yeah.
She was 30, I was 28. This just didn't make sense. And I had that moment, and probably somewhat like you had that moment, you know, uh, and lots of people have this moment, but I sort of said, I will never know why my sister was taken.
Yeah.
So I need to let that go because I can spend the rest of my life trying to get that answer and I'm not going to get it. And in talking with people for many years, I found a lot of people will be sort of saying, how could this, I've heard people say, how could this God that's supposed to be loving do this? How could I be hurt? All of that. And so I hear what you're saying, which is like, it's confusing, right?
Very confusing. It's so true what you say, Xander, because after my mom died, I was in such a state of sorrow, like losing my mom. I'm 23. I felt like I didn't have anything in life. I didn't have a husband. Didn't have kids. I was just a bartender. And here I saw my mom die, like this. And I remember after that, we had the plumber coming to the house because I was still living with my dad. And I was crying to the plumber. I was crying to the plumber, like saying, my mom, like this, why, oh, why, oh, why? And he said to me, this plumber, I only met him once. He said to me, when you stop asking why, you will see. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And that was a seed that was planted.
Yeah.
Because trust me, back then I didn't see. As time goes on, as my journey continued, I was like, aha. Yeah, if I stop asking why about everything, eventually I will see something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is one thing one of the books I wrote, it's called Making Lemonade. It's for siblings, about sibling loss, my experience of 5 of my friends who lost siblings. And I'm just trying to, my whole reason of creating it was because there's such a lack of resources for siblings. I'm like, I need to do something. And that's part of the work I continue to do. But, it's interesting that with all of, the Catholic Church and, Judaism and all of the religions of the world, here in the United States, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I can say in the United States, we do not deal with death at all. We treat it like it's the most communicable disease in the world. I don't know about you. My experience was everyone knew my sister had been killed, and yet no one would talk to me. Right. And I came up with this saying where I was at work and people would sort of stop by my cube, but they wouldn't say anything. And I put up a sign that said, it's okay to talk to me, right? And there isn't a miracle sentence that will make it better. I don't have one for you. You don't have one for me, but that's okay. But we have such a lack of process for dealing with death. Now, Judaism has, they said, Shiva. Other religions have things around death. It doesn't necessarily make it easy, but it gives you, in the moment of utter devastation, something to do. Whereas here in the United States, we're kind of like, well, we have a funeral, and after the funeral, it's like you fell off a cliff. I don't know if you felt that way, but like there were all these people, too many people around when your mom died, but then you're at the funeral, and then it's like the room is empty and you're by yourself, and you're like, where is everyone?
So true. They're all there. They're all there comforting you. They're all there saying, and that's what, because everyone at the funeral parlor kept saying, "Oh, your mom's at a good place, and she's at peace. She's in heaven. She's with God, but she's not with me. Don't tell me all that."
Yeah.
But then, yet, when somebody has lost someone, whether it's a parent or a sibling, they don't say anything. They just said, "I'm sorry for your loss." There's no words. There is no words to share with someone, to be there, to listen, but there are no words to say, like you said, magic. There's no miracle words or
No, there
magic words
aren't.
to tell someone.
But again,
No.
acknowledging there is, I never understood receiving lines until my sister. I went through it with my sister where I had gone through a few in my life, and I thought, what kind of torturous hell what can I possibly say? Right. I'm gonna go through, but I guess also being a man of psychology and getting curious about why do we do things, right? I've come to the conclusion that I think receiving lines actually serve a dual purpose. It's for each person, the person going through the line and the person standing there receiving stuff, that it's a dual acknowledgement of the loss, where both sides get to acknowledge that loss, that I feel the loss and you feel the loss, and we're each acknowledging. And I think that actually shares it's an important thing. Unacknowledged loss and grief is incredibly devastating. I know in the sibling survivor community, sadly, we are forgotten survivors. People ask how my parents were, but no one asked how I was.
Yeah.
Are your sibling relationships the longest one you'll have in your life? We reasonably expect that when we get to a certain age, and I don't know about you, but I used to, the number was much lower when I was younger, but it's sort of always going out. Like, oh, old is not, 60, it's now 80
Yeah.
but I think we all reasonably expect when, let's say people we're in our 80s, we're like, it is that time of our life where it is, if I could say acceptable, but more, we're like, oh, this is when it is more likely that people will pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And doesn't make it easier, but you go, oh,
Yeah.
yes, this is when this is more likely to happen than when we're younger.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with you totally, and I love your insightfulness because it is so true. According with death, even with grief, even and I learned the hard way. I learned through pain and suffering. I learned, and not to say so when somebody's grieving or have a loss, I don't say a word. I'm just there, and if they say they say anything or ask me, I said, just keep feeling your feelings. It's nothing wrong because as some ethnic or culture backgrounds, we keep our feelings in. We're still,
sure.
we don't want to feel, or we don't want to, and that's okay. But yet, in the long run, I have learned through my life and through all the trials I've been through. I'm a slow learner, but it's like, oh my God, it's okay to feel. It's okay to cry for your mom that has passed away. It's okay for it's okay to be angry. Yeah, go ahead, be angry at the person or what happened. Yeah, why not? Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, and everyone's grief journey is unique.
yeah,
There
it's
isn't a right way to grieve. Now, I will say, having talked about, sibling loss for the past,
yeah,
almost 20 years, that there are some ways that people choose to grieve which may not be as healthy. I don't want to say that it's wrong, but, if you're drinking a lot or taking drugs, that may not be your best way of coping. But I'm
no,
not going to say, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. I just, my own personal opinion is I don't know that trying to drown your sorrows in a liquor bottle or
yeah.
with drugs is actually going to help you on your journey.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I did that when my mom died. I mean, it's like, because when I drank, it was to take away all the pain, not
Yeah,
only for my mom, but just from myself. Like, I was
sure.
not even when my mom died, I was 23. One would think I was mature, had a hold on life and everything, but I wasn't. I was immature. I didn't have faith, so that I was sort of searching, finding that inner peace that I was just looking for something. So when mom died, I was like, I did. I mean, I had liked to drink in college. I was a drinker then. Mom dies. I'm like, let me just drink the pain away. I don't
Yeah,
want to face it. I don't want to embrace it. I don't want to look at it. I want my mom back. And those are the feelings that I had. But one tool I did use back then, because it's so true, there's not a right way or wrong way. Everyone grieves differently, especially in a family, because when you're in the family, when somebody dies, somebody goes right, somebody goes left, somebody
yeah,
goes this way, and boom, you're crashing, and then you don't, it's like, and I've understood that in my family when my mom died. It was 8 of us. I had taken care of my mom to the day she died, so I was lost where my other siblings had families. They went back, and we were kind of crashing. I took it the hardest, and but what I learned is, that's where they're at, to accept everyone on how they're grieving. But like you said, there's no right way, there is no wrong way. It's just on how you feel. And I was about to say earlier is that the way I did it, my sister gave me a journal back right at 2 weeks before my mom died, and
mhm,
on the journal, that was the first time I heard of feelings. This is a book of all my feelings. Boy, took that pen, wrote. I went one book after another, one book after another, and in my first year of 12 books, just about, it was to my mom. Why, like this, like
right.
this. It was just that, and that's how I dealt with it. That was my journey of just
absolutely. And I'm sure that was very cathartic for you to be able to release that energy.
Yeah.
And that is the thing with grieving. Grieving is it takes so much energy. And when you mentioned, certain cultures and ethnicities and stuff like, oh, keep it all in. Well, the problem is if you're not letting it out, it will get out at some point. Our bodies are wonderful machines of homeostasis, right? So if something isn't right, your body's going to do something to get itself back to homeostasis. So if we keep pushing all of that grief down and not letting it out, it will come out, and it usually comes out in a much greater explosion.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes people, you never see them cry, and when you see them cry, it is a soul-wrenching thing. That's because the body's like, nope, we have got to reset this back, and we are letting go of this energy. So I think I encourage people, find some creative way to write about it. And look, you could write angry letters to your mom, your brother, your sister, your father, whoever. Doesn't just have to be with death. Sometimes it's end of a job, end of a relationship. Your pet dies, right? You want to write your dog you had for 13 years. You want to write a letter to your dog and tell them how much you miss them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whatever you need to do. Now I am fascinated to know. Let's talk a little about being a end-of-life doula. Because
okay.
well,
Yes,
we
I
don't
love it.
have to, but
No, I do. I love it. I'm like, yeah, it's a passion of mine.
right. And even though I think I have an idea, why don't you explain for people who don't necessarily understand what an end-of-life doula is?
Okay.
What is it, and how did you get to that?
Okay, End-of-Life Doula, it's a non-holistic approach to somebody who is dying. It's not it's like an extra hand with hospice. Usually
Okay.
when people are dying at the end, but they don't have to be in hospice to have an end-of-life doula or ask for my service. It's just actually for me, is to be present to them, to help them transition from this life to the next.
Mm-hmm.
From this world to the peace, whatever denomination, whatever
Right.
faith, wherever they believe or not believe. I mean, I know what I believe, but I don't put that on them. I'm just
Right.
there to say, you are loved. It's okay. I'm there with the families to help them. Some of them, of course, like you said, or we say that people are afraid of death. People don't want to hear about death. So I try to be cautious of what I say and don't say. I feel the people out. If they're afraid, I don't talk, I go with the Holy Spirit. And so it is my passion because, and the way I got started, I had told you I took care of my mom,
Right.
right? I was telling you that. I didn't have any faith. I didn't have anything. And she died right in front of me, but I
Mm-hmm.
stuck by her. And when I was there, the hospice came in at the end and said to me, you know what? You would be very good with the dying, with hospice. I said, no way, Jose. I'm only taking care of my mom. I'm not taking care of
Right.
nobody else. My journey continues where I receive Jesus, the taste of heaven. And I'm like, oh my God, mom, is this where you're at? I just had this spiritual experience. And so I'm like, wow, if you're there, why would you want to come back here? Like I just had that kind of experience. And then when I was a nun, for some reason, God took that seed and let it grow because I was with many people on their deathbed, from all ages,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't bother me.
Right.
I was just there present because I believe and I know that every person, I don't care who you are, what you do or didn't do, we all have that dignity to die, that respect to die, that love to die, because some people die alone. And so as a sister, they used to call me Sister Death. They didn't want, some people would call me, hey, sister, could you go visit Johnny's, whatever, at the
Yeah.
hospital? I would go. Sometimes they would die right there, or they'd die after I leave, or the next day, or the 24 hours. And And I always just felt like there's such a peaceful presence at someone when they're dying. I feel the peace. I feel like heaven's coming in. So that's what it's a passion. Uh I love it. I mean, I know some people like, how could you love it? I can't say why. I don't know why.
Well, but
You know,
look,
I just
Gina, what I can say is I have a lot of enthusiasm to help my fellow siblings and to advocate for this community, which is, I joke that we're everywhere and we're nowhere in the sense that there's over 1 million new sibling survivors in the US every year. So they're everywhere. We're everywhere. And yet it's not like we have a button or a secret handshake or hand signal that says, "Hey, I'm a sibling survivor." So I feel you that say even though this is a really hard thing, if it is our calling, if it is what we're good at, and you're right, people do. Everyone deserves dignity, and most importantly, what I think is the choice, saying, I have this choice, and now I am choosing that I am going to transition. And I'm sure that you have the people who kind of are fighting all the way until the end, even though you look and go, I've got enough experience to say, I know what's happening. When my dad passed, he was in hospice for a very short period of time, like 12 hours, because we knew he was sick and we knew what was happening. He knew what was happening. It was his choice. He got to sort of go out. He didn't want, he had sepsis and they couldn't find it. So we knew that, there wasn't medically anything that we could do. And he had said a long time ago, he had a health directive said, I don't want extraordinary measures if there's nothing that can be done. So, but they handed us this great book in hospice that talked about kind of how death happens, right? And I was like, this would have been helpful 48 hours ago because it talks about how when people are getting ready to transition, there's sort of this brief period of like where they seem totally fine in their everything, and then you're like, oh my God, they're getting better. And I'm like, that would have been helpful because I saw that and I was like, we're all like, oh gosh, look, dad's getting better. I look back and go, well, no, that was just part of this whole process of how death really happens.
so true because so if somebody asks for my service, I go in and it's usually at the end or maybe the last day or they just want to know or and sometimes it's the patient. Like last year I had a patient just reaching out to me. He was a young kid, 50 years old and we talked. We talked for about an hour. He was asking everything. He was dying of cancer. And I said, here, I live up the block, whatever you want me to do. I could pray, I could listen, I could be here, however you want, whatever you want to leave this world in. We could do. I had like, not that I had all these plans, but I was sharing these plans. And at the end, we said a prayer together. I left. And he died the next day. His girlfriend reached out to me and said, oh, he found such peace after you left. I don't know what I did or said, but I'm like, wow, that's probably why, granted I wasn't with him for weeks or whatever. That was my purpose, is just to be there for that hour, just to share my experience, my heart, my love, my peace with him.
Right. And a lot of times knowledge is power, right? Like someone you obviously have witnessed many passings
Yes.
and you clearly have a heart of service. So you're like, knowledge is no good if we don't share it, right? If you know something and you can share it, and you're right. Half the time we say lots of stuff. I know when I'm helping people through grief, I say a lot of stuff and they go, "Oh my God, that was so helpful." And I'm like, "What part was helpful? I just said a lot, right?"
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter.
No.
They'll find what's helpful. They'll take that nugget that you shared.
Yeah. And that's true because I mean I'm not that I'm experienced with grief. I lost my mom with the sisters, that was a grief. That was a hard grief of
Oh, sure.
leaving the sisterhood. And then later on, I lost my fiance, Danny, to the disease of alcoholism a month before our wedding day. That was another grief episode. It's like, so I'm very good in grief. I know what grief is all about. And, but yet, I mean, when I just pray. I'm a very prayerful person today. So I ask God when God brings people in my life that needs whatever, if I could do it, I will help. Be
Absolutely.
comfort, be consoled, or whatever is need. And I don't even say I understand because I don't understand. Granted, you might lose your mother. I'm not walking in your shoes. I don't know. I could identify. Yeah.
Sure.
But I never say, well, yeah, I understand, or a loss of anything, even a loss of a sibling. I couldn't understand that. I have all my siblings alive, and I wouldn't say, oh, yeah, I understand. No, even a fiance lost. Oh, I understand. No. And one thing I will share is that after Danny died, I had nobody wanted to talk to me. Nobody said anything to me because Danny died. He was an alcoholic, so he
Right.
died of the disease. So that's a whole new stigma of grief world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like, wow. It's like, what else am I going to learn these days? I mean, I smile now. Back then, I wasn't smiling. Trust me,
I
Xander.
can imagine, Gina.
Yeah. So, but yeah. I just try to be present, to be with people and share my experience, strength, and hope. And that's why I wrote my book, my memoir, it's all about everything to at least help one person say, yeah, there is hope out there, whether
Absolutely.
you
And
see it or not.
what is your book called?
It's called Shake the Dust Off Your Feet and Walk, and it's available on Amazon.
Awesome. That is great.
Yeah.
Now, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Through my website, it's Gina Econ, not Economopoulos, it's ginaecon.com. And there's more about my book, about me, about blogs, about other podcasts, and also contact. If you want to contact me, because I don't care who you are, whatever you need, I'm here. You could be in Timbuktu. I could say I'm a good prayer listener, whatever it may be. So
Awesome. Well, Gina, thank you so much for that valuable work that you've been doing and that you continue to do.
thank you, Xander. I
And
appreciate it.
no problem. I want to thank you for coming on. I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And excitingly, if you want to appear in person in studio with me, I have a brand new TV show called Epic Begins with One Step Forward. Go to epicbegins.com and reach out and let me know, and I'll see if I could have you on as a guest. As always, I want to remind everyone that epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book Epic Begins with One Step Forward at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.